Hey guys, welcome to our next video. Hopefully you're ready to be done with HTML for a little while and instead spend some time looking at some CSS. CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and these are the ways that we're going to actually style our pages within our site. As you can see right now, we have that white background, we have that default typeface, the black coloration for the type itself. The page doesn't really look that stylistically great, and we're going to take a few steps to hopefully make it look a little bit better. Remember, this is all just about the basics, so we're just going to be learning kind of how we can be a little dangerous with CSS. Later in this course, we spend a lot more time talking about how we can actually go in and get things looking what we would call pixel perfect to the designs that we're creating in this course. So for right now, I just want to talk about how we can actually get CSS into the page and then how, in terms of syntax, CSS works. Right now, I'm on this index.html and we have the rendering over here on the left-hand side. Inside of this head element, I'm going to go below the title. So I'm inside of head, below the title. We're going to write a style attribute, or a style element rather. This is one way that we can get CSS into our page, and it's really one of the easiest ways when we're first starting out. So just like we would have a body or an H1 or whatever it may be, we now have a style here inside of the head. We're putting it inside of head because these pages really load from top to bottom, and we want this style set of rules that we have to load before the rest of our page does. If we wrote this at the bottom of our page, all that HTML, all that structure would load first looking like this, and then would flash into the styles that we provide with it. We want these styles to appear first so that we don't get this what we call flash of unstyled content appearing first. We want things to look like they should from the very beginning. That way our users have a great experience. Inside of a style tag, so really I'm inside of CSS right now, I can write a comment just like I can in HTML, but the syntax is a little bit different in terms of how the language works. So if I'm on a Mac, I'm using this command key and then the / to create this open and close tag for a comment. If I'm on a Windows device, I'm using control and / to do the same thing. What we're going to be doing when we're writing CSS is we're going to be writing what we call style rules, and we're going to be using what we call key value pairs. I'm actually going to come back on this for a second because we're going to use those key value pairs inside of something else. These style rules are written for types and classes. Types are going to be the different types of elements that exist in the wild in HTML already. So things like body, things like H1, paragraph, anchor, all of these are types. What we'll eventually get to is that we may have multiple versions of paragraph tags on a page, and we want to specifically select one of them. That's when we're going to use classes in a little bit. So right now, let's go ahead and do type selectors. I'm going to begin by writing the name of the type. So let's do H1s right now. I'm going to go ahead and write H1. I'm going to do a space, and then I'm going to go ahead and do a pair of curly brackets. These are up by the P key on your keyboard. You can hold down Shift and then hit that bracket button, and it's going to go ahead and create these. I'm going to hit Enter, and this is just kind of stylistically how we write CSS. Things are indented like this, so we can parse through and read it a little bit easier. Now, inside of these selectors, we're going to be writing what we call key value pairs. Every bit of CSS that we write is going to have a key, which is the kind of a synonym for a property, and then a value, so what we're setting it equal to. So right now, this H1 has a key of color for the text, what the color of the text is. It has a value set to black. That's just by default. Right now, if I come in here, I can go ahead and say color, because again, that's that key, the property, and I can put a colon, so I'm telling it, hey, set the color equal to, and I'm going to say blue. So I'm giving it the key, putting a colon, giving it the value, and then putting a semicolon at the end. This is the key value pair. If I hit save and come back over here and hit refresh, watch what happens to the H1. It's now changed to blue. So what we're doing is we're just telling it, take every H1 on the page, take its color, set that color equal to blue. Let's do something else. Let's come in and I'm going to give it a margin of 40 pixels and give this a save. Watch what happens to this H1. So I'll give it a refresh now. It's now indented itself in 40 pixels and down 40 pixels. It's also put 40 pixels between H1, and H2. The margin is kind of the cushioning on the outside of the element itself. I can come in and I can give it a border, and I'm going to say solid 1 pixel blue. So what we're doing here, this is a little more complicated. We still have this key. The value is now a little bit different and harder to remember. This is the style of the line that we have for the border. This is how fat the border is, and this is the color of the border. If I give it a save and come back in, now we have this blue border that goes around the H1. I think that looks kind of like compressed, right, and a little bit tight. So I can come in here and I can say padding, let's say 20 pixels. And come back over here and give it a refresh. And now we have some more space inside. So maybe just making these notes for ourselves here, right? Color is going to be focused on the text color. The margin is going to be space around the element. The padding is going to be space inside the element. And the border, I think we know what the border is. I don't like those sharp lines for the borders, so I'm going to come in here and find the border radius property and give it a value of 13 pixels. Watch what happens on these corners now. Let's give this a save, give it a refresh, and hey, they become a little bit more rounded as well. Right? So you can look through, and there's tons of documentation online for all the different properties that exist on elements in HTML. And you can go ahead and write properties and then value rules for each of the different elements that you have within a page. But again, this is only happening for H1s right now. Let's come down here, and I'm going to go and beneath where I had this paragraph tag for the hello there, I'm going to do another paragraph tag. And I'm just going to say this is another piece of text. Come back over here and refresh. So now I have these two pieces here. And honestly, just for the ease of things, so we're not seeing a bunch of extra stuff on here, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these things and come back over here and refresh. So just because we now have a little bit less on the page for ourselves, and maybe again, just to kind of keep things nice and simple, we've really only got our 2 paragraph tags here. Sorry. Actually, my bad. We just styled that H1. Shouldn't we keep that H1? Of course we should. Let's get rid of these other heading tags. Get this body over so it looks a little nicer, and then give it a refresh. Okay, so we've got our welcome to my site still that we styled. That's the H1, and then we have these 2 pieces of text, these 2 paragraph tags. So now that I have these 2 paragraph tags within this page, let's go ahead and let's write some style rules that go for paragraph tags. Inside of this style element that I have here, these style tags that I have, outside of this H1, I'm going to come down and I'm going to say P for the paragraph. I'm going to go ahead and give a rule here. So for this one, I'm going to give it the color property. I'm going to set it equal to tomato. And if I come back over here and hit refresh, we'll see that both of these pieces of text are now a tomato color. But let's say I only want it really to happen for the first one here. I can come into this open tag that I have for this first paragraph inside of my site or my page here, and I can go ahead and bring up the class attribute, and I could say important text like this. If I hit save and refresh, nothing is changing over here because this rule that I have for tomato is still applied to all paragraph tags. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of that. I'm going to put a period, and I'm going to say tomato. Actually, I'm going to say important dash text. And then I'm going to go ahead and open the curly brackets just like before. So you'll notice that things are a little bit different color here in terms of how this is being parsed by my text editor. The H1 is red. That's because it's a type. This dot important dash text, this is going to be what we would call a class selector, right? So it's a way of selecting certain classes of information inside of my HTML document. So I could come in and I could say color tomato, give it a save and hit refresh. Watch what happens to our text here. Only this first one now is getting these rules because it has this class of important dash text. This will work really well when we're starting to create lots of elements that have similar structure that use the same types, but we want to style certain ones different ways depending upon their importance or where they appear on the page itself. So this is a way of being really specific about the CSS rules and how they're applied, how we select different elements within our page. So that's the first way of getting CSS into our page and starting to style our document a little bit. What we can do as well, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to copy all of this. I'm actually going to cut it. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to get rid of this style tag altogether. I'm going to save my page and come back and refresh, and we go back to that same nasty looking site that we had earlier, that same awful looking page. Underneath this index.html, over in my file or my folder structure, I'm going to right click again. I'm going to say new folder, and I'm going to organize what I would call my assets. And inside of that, I'm going to create a new file that I'm going to call styles.css. And now we have this new file here. I'm going to go ahead and paste in what I had from that style element on the index page and give it a save. And if I come back here to index.html, if I refresh, if I save rather, and then refresh over here, I still don't have my styles. Well, I haven't brought them into this page yet. I've got to tell this HTML document that when it's loading, go and find inside this assets folder, this styles.css page. And I can do that in the same place where I wrote them earlier. So I'm going to come down below title here, and I'm going to type in link. And it's going to go ahead and know that there's an attribute of the style sheet that we're looking for. And it's going to guess, like, is this stored in CSS and master.css? It's not. So I'm going to go ahead and hit backspace. We're going to make sure we have our double quotation marks, and I'm going to say /assets/styles.css and give this a save, and we'll see what happens. If I refresh, nothing. I forgot my period here. So now let's save, give it a refresh, and hey, now our styles are back into our page. So this is a way of bringing in CSS from somewhere else. And you may ask, like, why would you want to do that? Well, there's a couple of reasons. One, it makes this page or this file a lot cleaner of not having all that CSS in it. But two, more than anything else, what if I wanted to apply these different rules to different pages? I can now take this same link that I have here, and like if I were to go to my contact page, we see that it's black right now with the text. If I come in the contact.html and go below title, paste in that style sheet reference, save it, and give it a refresh, now we have the same appearance. So I don't have to write this code over and over again in each of my HTML files. I can just import it to each of the ones that I want to use it in, which makes it a lot easier. I know I said that there were going to be 3 ways that we were going to look at and bring in CSS, but I think since we're just talking about the very basics of all of this right now, this is a really good place for us to stop. At this point, I would think about us trying to write some different type and class selectors and really starting to play around with the way that your page appears.